Hi, I'm back. What's up, guys? This is the first video lecture for the animation class you're taking right now. Disregard the SGD 162 if you're in DEET. This video lecture will cover both disciplines of SGD and DEET classes. So let's just get on with it. Alright, so the first thing we gotta do when we're understanding Maya's interface for animation is we gotta make sure we switch to the animation menus. So I'm gonna bring up Maya here. And most of the time we've been working with polygons if you've been used to modeling and whatnot. So we got to make sure we go up to this top left and switch to animation and watch these menus change when we do that. Boom. We get a whole new set of menus right here. The first 5 or 6 will stay the same, but here we go. We have all our animation menus now. And I'm just going to hop back and forth between the PowerPoint and the lecture. So let's just do a quick menu walkthrough. I'm not going to get into much of each menu. I'm just going to give you a heads up for what they are, why they exist, what they do. Alright, so the first menu is a pretty big one. It's the Animate menu. And rather than me just read the PowerPoint, let me just go straight to Maya and show you what it does. So this is the menu that basically has the most basic that's really good, has the most basic tools that we need to get started with in order to start making keyframes to get our animations up and running. Set key is our most basic tool. As you can see, it has a little S here. That's the default key on the keyboard, and you're going to be pressing it a lot during this class. Every time you press S, you make a keyframe. I'll get into keyframes in a second. Other things here, set-driven keys, more advanced stuff, but very useful. IK, keys, differences in how skeletons move for us when we start making skeletal rigs for our models. What other? Create clips and poses, more advanced character animation tools, turntables, motion paths. Also allow you to make a turntable, makes a 360-degree turn of your model. Motion paths kind of, you make like a curve and the animation follows the curve, so you have like a set path for your animations. Most of these menus I'm going to go through, we're really not going to use them too much in this class, so don't get bogged down by them. They just exist, and I'm telling you why right now. So let's go on to our next one, the geometry cache. This is a very advanced menu. I'm not even going to go into Maya to show you, but it basically has tools that allow the artist to make storage, I guess, little caches is the best word to use it. If your model has a lot of advanced and hard to calculate vertex deformation, so let's say you have like a face that makes a lot of movements, or a character that kind of morphs his skin, or the vertices on the model will be moving around. That takes a lot out of Maya, so you can cache them out, make little carbon copies of them, and call them from local places on your hard drive or on a network if you're working in a big studio or something. It's just there to make vertex deformation animations less chunky on your computer. It makes everything run a little bit smoother. Create deformers. This is a pretty big one. It has a few tools that I like to use every once in a while. Create deformers. Lattice and blend shapes are two big ones. Lattices, let's go ahead and make like a little cube, and I can show us how a little lattice works. I'm going to go in and make a, yeah. Oh, well, I made a sphere. That works too. So if I have my sphere here, you go to Create Deformers and make a lattice for it. Let's check this little box right here so we can really get into it. These divisions right here, they basically make a little 3D matrix or grid around your model. When you hit apply and close this out, like I said, now we have this little wireframe box around it. You can grab these lattice points here and start moving around, and look what happens. It's like a soft selection mod tool. So if I just want to move different parts around, vertex deformation. See, just single vertices are selected in a contained area. It lets you create some really wacky vertex deformation stuff. It's good for modeling sometimes because you can take like a straight cylinder and use a lattice to kind of bend the pipe if you need to have a curvy pipe or whatnot. You can actually animate these lattice points, so you can have like this little guy animate outwards like if he's a blob or something. So that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to undo all this. Maybe I'll just go in and delete it because we don't really need to go into it anymore. Blend shapes are really nice. They're preset vertex animations. Let's say we have a face and it's just looking at you with a blank stare. Well, we can create blend shapes that make the eyebrow raise. There's like little sliders you can slide back and forth to make the eyes go up and down. And they work really well with set-driven keys. So you basically make a start point for the eyebrow at a neutral pose, and then you make a blend shape that can make it raise and lower, and the set-driven keys give you the tools to let that happen. Let's keep moving on. Edit Deformers, an advanced menu. I've never really used this too much, but it's an advanced menu that allows you to tweak the deformation tools you've created. So that really advanced fine control that you'll see in Maya sometimes. Skeleton, this is a big one when we start getting into character rigging and whatnot. It's going to have various tools, joints, and all kinds of stuff that allow you to basically make a little skeleton. I'll show us a little example of making some joints real quick. So if I select my joint tool like I just did, and I go into front view, let's get rid of this box. Let's say I want to make a little spinal column for my character. I'm going to start up here. Let's say this is the neck. Let's make a bone that connects it to the chest, to the abdomen, and then to the pelvis. Alright, and let's start making his left leg. So here's his hip bone, here's his knee, if I move down here, and here's his foot. So when I press enter, I now have this chain of joints here that I can now start bending around, rotating. And you can imagine if you have a whole little stick figure and you make a whole skeleton like this for him, you can make a whole little rig for him and make him dance around if you want. So I'm just going to delete this. Let's get back into the slides. Skin. Skin is a really important menu. After you make your little skeleton rig that I just showed you, this menu allows you to bind it or attach it to your model. So if you have your little skeleton here, I guess, let me undo that delete. So if I have my little character here, and remember this is the neck, this is the foot, and this little skeleton sitting inside the model, how does Maya know that when you bend this one, you just want to bend the knee? Well, binding the skeleton allows you to, gives you tools where only the vertices from the knee down move, and like his pelvis and his abs, those vertices right there, they just stay in place and don't move at all. So binding is pretty, or scanning is really kind of a artistic. It's like an organic thing because you have to paint the weights in, and doesn't okay, these vertices will move for that joint, these vertices will move for this joint, and it's a whole little art unto itself. I think we got constrain next. Constrain basically gives you tools that help you make more advanced rigs. Whenever you have your character made, you have a skeleton made, you have the skeleton bound or skinned to the model, your little character. Sometimes you need little handles, little curves that give you control over your model. So let's say we had a car, and the frame of the car is the model, the mesh, and him going down the road with his wheels and everything, and his transmission and all that, that's your rig, that's your skeleton. Well, you know, how do you steer a car? Well, you need a steering wheel, right? Well, creating these handles and controllers are basically giving you steering wheels for your character. They move the skeleton and ultimately help you make better animations. Character, this is an advanced menu that allows the artist to create libraries of animations. So I have my running animation for my character. Okay, that's good. That's a clip, and then I can apply it to a character set, so it creates like a little menu for all your animations for a certain character. We won't use it that much in this class. We won't use it at all in that class. Another menu we won't use, but I want to let you know about, is the muscle menu. It does what it sounds like. It creates these muscle systems inside your rig. So if you bend your bicep, then it makes your bicep poke out and get big, like a bodybuilder would. Or if you're moving your abs, It makes the body, when you bend over, deform or bend correctly. Really advanced muscle system stuff. We will not be going over that in this class. But if you like rigging, in a year or two you can get into advanced rigging and you can start researching muscles on your own. Cool. So the time slider. This is a big guy. This is something that you will be seeing a lot of in this class. It's your main visual indicator that shows you what keyframes you have and where. And we'll just keep it on this right here, and I'll go over these various things right here. The time slider itself, this 1 to 24 range right here, these are actually frames in your animation. So frame 1, frame 2, so on and so forth. And on these single frames, this is where your keyframes will be placed. Excuse me. As you can see, I have everything listed. Maximum start frame. So if you want to start your animation on keyframe or frame 1, you say, okay, number 1 right there, frame 1. And the maximum end frame is how many animations you want in your scene. So if you need a certain amount of seconds in the certain scene, you figure out how many frames you're going to need and you type in 48 there. So that's like a 2-second animation we have in this certain scene. This little gray bar right here, let's go into mine, I'll show you how that works. So we have 48 frames of animation in this scene right now in this Maya window. Okay. Right now we only see 24 frames of this animation. Right here is our beginning frame for our visual, indicator here. So in this little bar right here, we start on frame 1, and as you can see right here, 24. This is what we are allowed to see visually. You can shrink this. So I just want to see 10 frames of animation on my time slider. Notice that it says 10 right here, 10 frames right here, and 10 frames right there. You can also just click in the middle and move it around. So let's say I want to begin on frame 20, so I can only see frame 20, and it goes all the way to frame 29 for you. You can stretch it, shrink it. This basically gives you tools to really zoom in and see what's going on in your time slider. Let's say we had a scene with 2,000 frames of animation, okay? Let's stretch our little visual indicator all the way to 2,000 frames. As you can see that now Maya only displays the little dashes here in increments of 50 and 100. So if you have a lot of frames of animation and you need to hone down on just a certain part, you're going to need to shrink this little time slider so you can really look at your keyframes in detail here. So I hope that makes sense. Animation layers and character sets, won't be just using that too much here. That goes hand in hand with some of the menus we saw up here, such as the character menu, or doing poses and clips. This little key right here toggles on auto keyframe. So I don't like keeping it on. I like to make my own keyframes by pressing S on the keyboard. But if you have it toggled on and you're on, let's say, let's put this back down to 48, and let's say you're on frame 24, well, every move you make on objects in the scene right here automatically get a keyframe. So if I move a sphere up, I'll show you. Let's make it a little bit smaller. So normally if I wanted to move my sphere, I'm going to make a keyframe on frame 1 with the sphere kind of right here. So I press S, I immediately get a red line right here, and you can see all my transformations right here get a red pinkish box. That's saying on frame 1 the sphere is this size and it's in this location. So let me bring it down to frame 26, okay, and I'm going to move the sphere forward. Okay, now I'm going to press S again, and I have a new keyframe. So now when I scrub between these frames right here, we can see my sphere moving. Alright, so I want to make the sphere kind of do a hop from here to here. So I'm going to go about into the middle of these two red lines right here, these two keyframes. Now I'm going to toggle auto keyframe on, see how it's red now. And look what happens at the 14 when I move this sphere up. It automatically gives it a keyframe. I didn't even have to press S on the keyboard. So now I have this ball hopping back and forth as I scrub the timeline. But let's say you forget you have it on, and you're like, I wonder what the sphere looks like if it's bigger. Alright, I don't like that. Alright, whatever. Oh, wait. It's still getting bigger there now. Oh, I had auto keyframes turned on, and it automatically made a keyframe for me. So you can get in trouble sometimes. If you're really good and you have a good flow of animation, you can keep that on. But for right now, let's keep that off so we have full control over when keyframes are made. Okay? So rule of thumb for this class, make sure that's gray and not red. X that. We don't want it red. This little button right here brings up some preferences for us. The main thing we should be looking at, we have the maximum or the minimum and maximum frames in the scene. So if I change this to 72, we can see down here that I now have 72 frames. A few other things we need to look at. Looping, continuous. Whenever you have the looping on and you hit play, it'll just loop back and forth here and then start over. Once, just plays it once and stops. See how it just stops? I play it one time and it just stops at 72. Playback speed's a really big one. If you play just every frame, look how fast the sphere goes. You can't even see what's going on. But if we open up our preferences menu again and put it at real time, which is 24 frames per second, that's the default in Maya. That's film time, 24 frames per second in film. So now we have a hop, and it plays like it would in real time. So always, for the most part, always keep this in real time. It just gives you a better idea of what's going on in your scene and your animation. You've already seen me play with this time slider right here, or these play controls. You can just figure it out for yourself. They're easy. Play forward, play backwards. You can hit stop to stop it. Go from keyframe to keyframe. You see this little arrow with a red line in it. It hops between the keyframes on your time slider. You can see on my time slider right here, I'm just hopping around from keyframe to keyframe. The ones without the red line just go to the last frame and the first frame. And these go to the very end of your total scene right here and the end. Alright, so now that we got the time slider out of the way, let's see what's next. We've already been through the animation preferences. We've already talked a little bit about keyframes. Here's a little picture as a reminder here. These red vertical lines are keyframes. They are the nuts and bolts of 3D animation. I already showed you how to kind of make a quick little ball jump animation. You basically just make a keyframe at your start position. I like to have made a keyframe where the ball is going to end up. So I had it positioned here. Then I jumped ahead to frame 25, and moved it forward and made a keyframe there. And then remember when I went into the middle and moved it up and made a keyframe there? Without that keyframe, I'm right clicking on the time slider right now to delete that. Without that middle keyframe, it just goes back and forth, right? But if I go to frame 15 and go to my move tool and put it back up, and then I hit S on the keyboard, right? Now I have a little hop to my animation. Alright, cool. Here's a cool little trick. If you ever want to scrub your time slider and you don't want the ball to move at all, or any object in your scene to move, right now I'm just left clicking on it and dragging. Left click, hold, and drag to scrub through the timeline. But if I middle mouse click and drag, look what happens. The ball stays in place. So let's say I want my ball to hop from my starting position back to where it was. So I want it to go boom, boom. Right now I can do that because I'm just scrubbing the timeline. But let's make this continuous. But right now, all the ball does is hop and stay there. And then it starts over, stays there. What if I want my ball to hop there and then go back? Well, what I can do is I have my keyframe right here. Let's see. I can keep my ball at the initial position, but I want it to go back at that exact same place. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to put my indicator right here on frame 1. Then I'm going to middle mouse click and drag to like frame 45. And notice how I'm on frame 45, but the ball is still in the start position. I hit S there, and look what happens now. Then it slides back. It hops, then it slides back. What if I want to make it hop in that exact same height on the way back? Well, I position my time slider back at the height of the jump on frame 15. I middle mouse click and drag to about the middle here, and I press S, and now I have a ball that's hopping back and forth. And you know, I want the ball to hop back and forth continuously. So what I can do is I can take my visual indicator meter here and just click and drag the little square indicator on here and make it its last frame, frame 45. And now I have a little animation of the ball hopping back and forth. That is some basic animation, but a good place to start. Alright, great. So we'll just keep this little ball animation going on. So those are keyframes. I already showed you right click on the time slider. It's really handy if you accidentally make a little keyframe here and you don't want it. Say I made a keyframe with the ball all the way out there, and now it kind of goes and then comes back. That's crap. I hate that. I don't want that. So I'm going to position my indicator on the right side of this little click, not on the left side, but the right side of this little keyframe. I'm going to hold right click and select delete, and now my keyframe is deleted and I'm happy. You can also copy and paste keyframes. You can go to frame 1, hold shift, see this little red line I'm dragging. I can right click on it, copy it, and then I can paste it anywhere on my time slider. But it's going to make a mess of things. Let's see what happens now. Oh, well, that's not good. So you gotta be careful whenever you're messing around on your time slider like that. Excuse me. So the graph editor. I'm going to briefly touch the graph editor in the dope sheet real quick. But the graph editor is basically a visual indicator, a visual editor that shows you all your animations you have in nice flowing curves. Organic movement, like I was discussing earlier, organic movement is sweeping arches. Everything has a nice curve or arch to it. The graph editor lets you see all of your animations in these nice little curves here. Ooh. So let's see what the graph editor looks like on the ball I have going on right now. So I just go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And then I get this little new window coming up. Maya loves its windows. And I can size it, do all kinds of stuff with it. And basic camera navigation is just like Maya. Hold alternate on the Windows. Sorry, you just have to figure out on Mac. I'm using a PC, long lift PC. I'm holding alternate and middle mouse clicking to drag. And while I hold alternate, if I right click and hold, I can zoom in and out. There's no rotate here because this is a 2D grid. But those two little tools can help us navigate what's going on. These little curves here indicate what's going on with our animation. So let's look at this green curve right quick. This green curve indicates my Y translation on my ball. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And in this window right here, let me give you a real-time example. It shows you your curves of how fast and in what position your ball goes up. Okay? So let's say I want the ball to jump really high forward and really low backwards. So all I got to do is, let me stop this. I'm going to select this little point right here because that's actually a keyframe. That's keyframe 14. If I scrub on my timeline right here and go to keyframe 14, it's right on that little point in the curve. So on that point on the curve, I can select it and move it all the way around. You know, I can move it back a keyframe, forward a keyframe. I can move it up. And since this controls the translation or the movement up and down, when I make the curve get steeper here, it makes the ball jump higher. Vice versa, if I want the ball to barely bounce back and I lower this curve, look what we get now. So he gets really excited and then kind of timidly bounces back. Yeah, I mean, I made the ball seem like he's like a little dog or a character or something. That's an important thing you gotta always think about when you're animating. The pathos of the character. Remember the Frank and Ollie video I showed you? What is the character thinking and why does he feel that way? Well, I just applied pathos to this ball. I made his curve get really high, so he's like really excited, and then he's kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not so excited anymore. Happy, oh, timid, excited, timid. Just those little bits of tweak on the graph editor can add a whole new expression to your ball. Let's look at some other aspects of the graph editor. The translate Z, okay? The Z axis makes the ball go forward and backward in this particular animation. Alright? So we can see now, at the beginning of my curve, it's really low right here. And at the end of my curve, it's really low right there. Alright? So what if I want him to not go so far forward? Well, let's go to the time slider when he lands. And you would think we'd move it back, right? No, let's just move it down a little bit. Let's make that curve flatter. He doesn't jump as forward as much anymore. What if I want him just to jump really forward in the air? And then, bam, he's really far forward here. Let me show you how far forward he jumped. It's like he goes up and then does a sweeping dragon kick or something. I don't know. Boom, and then he comes back. But that's making it look kind of weird. So let's just keep it back there. And then these curves describe every translation or transformation we have on this ball. Remember, we can move or translate in the X, Y, and Z axis. We can do the same for rotation, X, Y, Z rotations, and the scale, X, Y, and Z scale. I didn't scale or rotate the ball, I just moved it. So the translations are only going to be the ones that have the curve. Why is X flat right now? That doesn't make any sense. The other two are curved, but X is flat. Well, let's look at the ball from the front. Let's say I kind of want him to land to the right here and then jump back there. So I'm going to take this time slider to this keyframe I have there. And look what happens when I mess around with my translate curve. If I move it up or down, well, that didn't make sense. At the height of his jump, all of a sudden he starts going in that direction. I don't understand what's going on. I need to make that jump look more fluid, like he's jumping to the side there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the height of that jump, and this is where the curves really come in handy. To make this look more believable, instead of making this curve go flat and then peak, I'm going to add a nice transition there to it. Okay? So look what happens now. Now the ball goes straight to the side. And I'm not going to worry about fixing that back one right there. But as you can see, now that the curve has a nice build up to it, it flies in a pretty natural path to the right. Look what happens when I make it flat again, though. He goes up, and then he veers. So this curve is controlling the left to right movement of this ball. And the curve really gives me a good indication of, okay, if the more natural this curve looks, and you can even grab these little handles to make it, more curvy. The more natural this curve looks here, the more natural that jump to the right looks as well. Alright, I spent a lot of time on the graph editor. I'm going to move on though. So that's the graph editor. Those curves are pretty handy sometimes. Alright, the dope sheet. It's probably the coolest sheet in the whole Maya or something. I don't know why they call it the dope sheet, but it's pretty cool. It basically lets you adjust the timing of your animation. No big deal. So what does it look like? No, that doesn't look too cool. That looks confusing. What's going on here? Well, we have another grid here, like in our graph editor, and of course it denotes the frames. It denotes time. So there's frame 12. Oh, my computer's running slow. And there's frame 46. These little black bars, what the heck are those? Those are actually keyframes. The dope sheet just kind of displays them in blocks. This gives you a really good idea of what keyframe is on what block of animation or what frame of animation. So let's go back into Maya and let's look at our dope sheet for our little dope ball we got going bouncing around here. I'm going to go to Window, Animation Editors, Dope Sheet. So what's going on here? Nothing's on my dope sheet. It's blank. Well, I got to select my ball. That's crazy. What a rookie mistake, right? You got to select those objects. And all of a sudden, my little black little blocks of keyframes come up. And let's say I want to make this whole animation happen faster. It's getting all crazy right there. Let's pretend the ball is like got a really wicked spin on it or something. I'm not going to waste too much time fixing it. I want to make this ball bounce faster. He's kind of fast right there, but I want that initial jump to be really fast too. So remember one of the principles of animation, timing, how fast things move. Well, what I'm going to do in my dope sheet is I'm going to look. Alright, so this is where the ball lands. So I want those keyframes to be closer together so it has less time to act out that jump. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just drag a bar around all these keyframes. Alright, now they're yellow. And I'm going to middle mouse click and just drag them back. And then I'm going to select these right here and drag these back. So I've effectively shortened that time it took for the ball to jump. Look what happens now. The ball jumps faster. This is exaggerated. So what I need to do is I need to make the keyframe from here to here happen faster. So anytime you want something to happen faster in Maya, to shorten the distance between keyframes. So I'm fast up, but I'm still kind of slowed down. Let's see what happens if we move the keyframes when he lands. See, here's my little time slider. These are the keyframes for when he lands and jumps back. Let's make this really far apart, and look what happens. Let me get a better view of what's going on here. So he jumps up and comes down slow. He jumps up, comes down slow. He jumps up, comes down slow. So the farther apart they are, the slower these keyframes go. And look what happened on my time slider. Now I have this huge gap of keyframes. But if I middle mouse click and drag these yellow keyframes right there, look what happens now. I made him jump really fast. Let me shorten this visible. Now he's jumping fast. So the dope sheet really helps you hone in on how fast your keyframes are working together. Remember, the farther apart your keyframes, the slower the animation. The closer apart the keyframes, the faster the animation. So close together, fast, far apart, slow. So that's going to kind of wrap it up for this lecture. Right now, I want you guys to take time and play around like I just did. Get a ball or a sphere, make him bounce around, make him run fast, make him run in a circle. Use your graph editors and your dope sheets to really tweak it and just have fun with it. Thanks, guys.